Close to
So-
the mic.
Pardon?
Close to the mic for those who have to say pardon.
Okay, is that better?
Microphone, not
Is that
me.
better? Okay.
I know, microphone.
All right, so I gotta talk about houses and how they might fit into barter and trade and exchanging. And there's some big things in here, but also some little ones and something that I get some feedback on. Maybe there's some other formulas that we might be using. But let me start with saying that I think probably the single-family home owner-occupied, trading for the single-family home owner-occupied is probably the toughest exchange there is. It's just almost impossible. You're dealing with emotions and a lot of that kind of stuff. But if you take, in fact, Jack Kistler, that used to, we shared offices, that when we did another one of these things early on while we were learning, and then I had to sign a paper with him, subject to death, if we ever did another one. It can be really difficult. But if you put another ingredient into it, you put the homeowner versus a professional in some way, then the deal works. Then you can make trades. Your home trade-in program is an example of that, how it can work. But there's a lot of others too. But to get the background on this, what I did on Monday, I took a sample. I took Reno's, the guy that started this business, this exchange business as we know it today, was a guy named Dick Reno. And in his book and in his class, he taught one on I think it was a multiple exchange that he did, and he used a $6,000 house in San Diego. Flash forward now some years, and when I first moved down to California, and I was renting in Newport, I'd been there about 4, 5, 6 months, and I made a deal with another broker. We ended up with 2 houses in by Mariners in the West Cliff area, and I bought one of those to move my family into. I think I paid $24,000. So that was probably the same kind of house that Dick was dealing in down in San Diego. Flash forward, my grandson about 5 years ago bought a house 2 blocks from this one in Newport. Fixer-upper, bad shape. Same builder, similar floor plan, about the same size. He paid $800 for it. On Monday, I tried to find a heat map for Newport Beach. I couldn't find one, but I got a heat map for Orange County. And right at that time on Monday, you had 12,800 houses listed in Orange County. And the average price was $1,208,007. So now, you pick the house, whether it's the 6,000, I imagine that house is probably an average that we're talking about. So here we have the $6,000 house, the $24,000 house, the $800,000 house, and the $1.2 million house, and it's the same damn house. It's the same house. The only thing that's changed has been the price. The only thing that's changed in the deal is the price. Now, we're in real estate, so we have appreciation. We used to. That was our motivation. But now there's some other things that are happening here, whether it be Greenspan or Bernanke or whoever it is that's printing the money. It's supply versus, if this costs $1 and I create 10 more dollars, this is going to cost $11. I mean, it's that simple. So, but we're having a problem when you deal with houses, because, and I've been kind of watching here today. In those days, when we could buy houses or get houses, we were looking for something that give us about a 1% rent ratio, 1% of the value a month. So if I got a $30,000 house, I wanted to get $300 a month rent. If I could get that, I had a decent investment, okay? Today, this house for $1.2 million, what's it going to rent for, $2,000 or $3,000? I don't know what it's going to be, but the ratio is way off, okay? So now, when you take the ratio off, it's different than if you're in another investment property, because you've got 2 things. You've got growth, which was great. When we were doing this and we went into Oregon, and in about a 3-year span, we picked up 40, somebody, I can't know the number, it was over 50 houses, okay? At that ratio, the 1% a month or so. We didn't do so well in that deal. Carlos Royal, who is another fellow in this art group, Carlos got like 600 houses in the one deal with the REOs and hit it right on the button, hit the market just perfect. When I was doing this, when I got back here, I was trying to find another way that I could finance it. I could see this bubble coming. It was before it happened. I could see it coming. So I went to Ron Robinson, one of our group, and I was trying to finance 1,000 houses in Maui because they're running about 2 years. The islands run about 2 years behind the mainland, and so I was. And Robbie put me in touch with some Japanese fellas in Honolulu. We're going to talk to them. Couldn't get the financing. I met with Cliff and Bill, who had their company going, to see if I could get financing for 1,000 houses on this side. And Chet was building at the time, that maybe I could get him to build some tracts for us too. And Chet was you were building and I was trying to buy. Chet was right, I was wrong. Okay, that was the time to be building, and I should have been done that instead of what I was doing. Okay, but in the course of this, the only thing that beats you in houses are the mortgages. Now, in other real estate too, as this market's doing what it's doing. So I guess maybe 10 years ago, it was obvious that if we could use the Swiss technique of the performance mortgage, that would really make the big difference. So how could you bring the mortgage into the house market? Because the loans just beat you in this market. But the only thing, and that's why he asked me to print something. So I printed in there the one on change your geography. Change your geography. If you could just get the idea that you're not local. We were local brokers at one time, and now we're national. And I'm saying, God, you guys, international is the only real answer for what we're doing. Because let's take now, and a couple of you, or Chet at least has been down in Panama when we were down there, and you saw the condo that Mike and I had there, that one. So that's also in your book that you're going to get emailed, and it'll show in there, that book. What we did there, and the formula really worked, was you have to start with a free and clear one, because then you can move to the next ones. But you could buy a condo down there at that time for about 125 grand. It was a nice condo, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, just underneath the maid quarters deals. They're about 50,000 more. You stay in that range. Panama has an excellent rental market. They got the biggest engineering project in the world going on right now with the Panama Canal, and the entrepreneurs are flooding in there from Chavez country in South America. And
they speak English?
Pardon?
And they speak English?
Well, George, they did. But when Noriega, this is an aside, when Noriega was in as president, he made them stop teaching English. And so the schools didn't teach English. So now the new guy has come in, and so your central tier down there, the bankers do, but the clerks don't speak English. But now what's happened is this new guy's a straight entrepreneur. And they're not only teaching English, but in the high schools now, they're teaching, well, they're Spanish to start with. They're teaching English, and now they're all teaching Mandarin. Yep. So you got the perfect, if you're looking at demographics of what you're going to tell your kids to do 20 years from now, those are the 3 that they need, right? Yep. So you got me on a side trip on that, George. But on the condos now, they do something else down there. And this is why if we had a group where everybody had a sabbatical like they do in the LSD group, you had to spend a couple of years in another country, and you'd bring back the opportunities that are so easy to see that we could use. For instance, in Panama now, anything that's a new construction, there's no taxes for 20 years. So you pull the taxes out of your cap sheet, and it makes a huge difference if you're doing that part. In a house, you're not using the cap sheet, but if you take the 1% ratio, those condos were $125,000. They rented for $1,500 a month. Okay, and so you're way past the 1% factor. Then you take away the taxes, and you got the perfect deal. So I came back and said, okay, let's buy the 1,000 in Panama, but we had to have an investor for each one that would buy it down. They would take it all the way down and give them a first back against the property, which would be based on performance on the rents. They'd get paid not on a fixed number, but on then share 50% when we sold. And it's strictly a Swiss kind of a deal. So that deal works with housing, but I can't find them here. Now, you probably can move out of California, go into Kansas or someplace, I don't know, where you could get a decent ratio. But today, to buy the house and just go for growth, you don't get the growth anymore to speak of. So that's gone, and so now if you take away the spendable income from them, you've lost it all. So there has to be another way to do it. And I think that probably You very easily could take something like you pitched a little bit ago, a couple of the houses that have been pitched in here, the one in Colorado, and the one I think that was on a Have-Want. There's all kinds of properties laying around that would be able to free and clear lots that could be traded into that house. But then they've got that EAT, the reverse mortgage going on. But if you would share that with somebody that wanted to buy a house, let them move in on a lease basis, become half owners in 3 years or something. They've got, who is it said they had high income? The kids had high income. They got great income. See, some of them got really great income, but they don't have the 20% down. But it's easy to find the 20% down from our room in here of properties that aren't doing any good. They got lots out the door. So, let's see, I had any other notes? Okay. So I think that's pretty much it. Can somebody add something what we can do with houses to make them better? George? And then I can
You know, when
real loud, George.
You talk to people who maybe aren't familiar with real estate or what was happening 20 years ago, all you need to do to analyze the inflationary situation and say, you know, you used to be able to send a letter for 3 cents, and now it's more. Same thing has happened to real estate and almost everything else. You could buy an automobile for a lot less. So inflation is with us. It's going to stay with us as long as we're there. We need to prepare for it and plan for it.
Let me see, there's another one in your book that I'll mention that while I was writing it, and I went back to my old formula. When houses got back to 70 to 90 ounces of gold, I'd go out of gold and back into houses. Okay? That's what I said. Now, I changed that. I say all you need is 1 ounce. This thing is going to go to the moon because there's no way back now for them. They're printing that money. They're going to blow the bond market right out of the water. So they've got to print to infinity. So 1 ounce of gold, that will pay off your mortgage.
Yeah.
Chet?
I really think houses almost everywhere nationally have come back. San Diego's headlines last couple of days ago was that they went up 17% last year over the year before.
Yep.
Prices of homes in San Diego. And I was at the SEC meeting in Fort Lauderdale, and I was talking to the Florida brokers who I thought were really underwater. And they were saying, no, we're getting a terrific market. All these condos along the coast, and we're not having these issues anymore. And I don't know, I'm certain there's pockets where things are really still bad, but
Let me answer that.
there's opportunities now like we haven't seen for years.
Yeah, let me address it for just a second. What you've got is inflation, and inflation is what takes you out of your problem. Way back to Germany, that's what's taken us out of our debt, is the inflation part. So it's not the growth. This same coin I just hold up, it doesn't make any difference what the price of the house is when you pay it off with 70 to 90 coins or 1. Whether it's 10 million for that house, it won't make any difference. The house doesn't matter, the price doesn't matter, and it's going to keep doing that as you go into hyperinflation. If you look at this, what's going to happen here, I mean, if you're writing the right thing, and you guys are sitting on the real, you're sitting on the best item there is, and that's real estate. There's nothing better. But it's a different game. Free and clear is much better than it was when we wanted leverage in the old days. But right now, if you're sitting on free and clear, man, if you can time your coming out, when it really starts to flash, I think that what you're saying, Chet's the same thing. The people think it's profit. They're getting their profits, and but they're getting it. Right now, if you're worth $1 million, the dollar's worth 2 cents. You're worth 20 grand, okay, and your dad's money. So don't get fooled by what they're doing. Cliff?
Yeah, a couple of comments. Yeah, a couple of comments. First, on the housing market, what's going to happen? I mean, you're hearing packages pitched on land that developers are going to start to develop. What's happening is investors have been buying houses in Orange County, San Diego County. It's not users, it's investors they're flippers or they're renting them, okay? Because the cost of money is so low. They come in and buy them for cash, they put a loan on it at 2%, 3%, and then they cash flow the house by renting it. Now, what's going to happen, and that's been driving the price up because it's taken the inventory out of the market. for the user. The major companies like Rancho Santa Margarita, the Irvine Company, they're coming online. They're coming online with thousands of homes in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And they're going to be able to produce product below what the resales are. So, and then you're going to see an exit. You're going to see a lot of inventory. So I think it's a false market. Secondly, on financing, when we had the mortgage company that you were part of years and years ago, Robbie and I were playing around with an idea that we implemented. We did a few of them, and then things changed. And that was basically a participation mortgage. Basically, somebody that didn't have the down payment, what we would do is buy the house. We would make a 0 interest loan to them, 0%, but they had to pay 1% per month. And we figured out that that would pay back all of our money in I think it was 8.33 years. But during that period of time, we were sharing the equity. At the end of the period of time, we got all of our money back, and our equity was like 35%, and then they had an option to buy us out. Those kinds of things can work today.
You pitch the right formula. There must be thousands of these young kids backed up that would like to get into houses.
Right.
And,
I think the land lease is another great idea for houses today, to bring the price down. Keep the dirt, like the Irvine Company did back when you were in it. Yeah.
Yeah, they were the old 55-year land leases that they were using, and now I'm more in the 200 to 600 year is what I'm thinking is right. When we were in Chet and I and some other people were taking a hike in England for 4 or 5 weeks, 3 or 4 years ago, and at that time we talked to a builder there that owned land leases underneath a lot of London. They wouldn't put any money, their company wouldn't put any money in real estate in the U.S. They were building houses, I think it was Kosovo. He said, we got 5 buyers for every seller in that country. 5 buyers. He says, you can't keep them. And then in the Asian, they were building 5-star hotels. But if you get the little flexibility so you're hitting the right market. He said, okay. So I'm out of there, I've lost my chair.
Well, from the standpoint of where we are today with interest rates offered to us or to new buyers, there's a lot of people in this room, I think, probably don't remember when you were paying 16.5% for a first trustee on a pretty good house. I did. When it was, yeah.
I used to make those loans.
It's been up, but this is a very attractive time to pick up anything.
I agree. It's an interesting market, and it's all manipulated. The whole market's manipulated, and so you have to try to work within that system. And some of it's in and out quick.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. Also, Bob was one of the founders of Orange Coast, as I said earlier. So he and Madge and a few others go back a ways.